There was a time when I called off the wedding. I found out she had been cheating on me from the very beginning of our relationship. The woman I trusted completely, the woman I loved more than anything, had a secret. And the worst adjustment, I was guilty too. In my own way, when love is built on lies, and the person you trust the most doesn't know you well, what happens? Let me tell you our story. I remembered the day I found out like it was a punch to the gut. The kind that steals your breath, twists your stomach, and leaves your head spinning. We were sitting in that tiny coffee shop, the one with the chipped window and the faint smell of burnt espresso, when I saw it. A message. A text from months ago, buried in her phone, hidden behind casual laughter and late-night smiles. I didn't even need to read it fully. The words were enough. I can't wait to see you again. My heart sank before my mind could catch up. I had been so sure, so utterly convinced that she was different, that we were different. We had met in the most ordinary way, college library, over a pile of dusty books, but our connection felt extraordinary. I remember thinking, finally, someone who understands me, someone who really sees me. And I believed in that with every fiber of my being. But there it was. The betrayal. Not the kind that had led to fights, shouting matches, or public humiliation. No, this was subtler, more insidious. This was a secret life, a side of her I had never imagined existed, a part of her heart that was given to someone else. And the worst part, it had happened before we even decided to spend the rest of our lives together. I sat there, frozen. My coffee grew cold, untouched. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I felt the world tip sideways, the cafe spinning gently around me. I kept thinking, how did I miss it? How did I not see the signs? She had been perfect, so perfect, and now the perfection was a lie. Or maybe it had never been perfect at all. In the following hours, I replayed every memory like a film on a broken projector. The late-night phone calls, the subtle smirk she'd hide when she thought I wasn't looking. The sudden, mysterious absences. I had been too blinded by love, too enthralled by the illusion we had built together, to notice the cracks forming beneath the surface. And yet, there was a part of me that understood. Not excused, not condoned, but understood. I had my own skeletons in the closet, my own lapses. I had spent time with my ex, not physically, no, but emotionally, mentally, in ways that might have crossed lines. I told myself it was harmless, that I was simply seeking connection, something familiar, something comforting. But now, confronted with her betrayal, the truth sat heavier on my chest than ever. Before the wedding was a date circled on the calendar. Before the coffee shop revelation, our love had seemed like a story written for movies. We laughed at the same jokes, finished each other's sentences, and knew the other's thoughts before words left their mouth. I remember the first time I realized I loved her, not in some abstract, fairy tale way, but in a quiet, undeniable certainty. It was a rainy Thursday, the city drenched in grey. She was shivering, waiting for the bus, and I offered her my coat. She looked up at me, eyes wide and dripping rain, and smiled in that soft, subtle way that made me forget everything else. That's it, I thought. That's the moment we became inseparable. Friends commented on it. Strangers smiled when they saw us together, and we felt untouchable. Or maybe that's just what people think when they're young and in love. We spoke about the future casually, joking about where we'd live, what kind of dog we'd get, the colors we'd paint our walls. Every memory I now look back on carries a double-edged sweetness mixed with an ache I couldn't yet name. How could something so pure, so vibrant, hide a secret beneath the surface? She told me she loved me, and I believed her with a ferocity that blinded me. Every "I love you" became a promise, every gentle touch a confirmation of our bond. Asterisk, it wasn't just her. My own past and present choices cast shadows over our love. I had reconnected with my ex after years of separation, not out of desire for her. Not entirely, but out of curiosity, a longing for validation, and a need to feel attention directed solely at me. We talked. We laughed. Sometimes our conversations stretched into the early hours, full of reminiscences and confessions. Nothing physical happened, but my mind played with possibilities, with what could be, until I realized that I was betraying her trust just as deeply in another form. And yet, unlike her, I never left her side. I never lied to her directly. I justified it in my head as emotional support or friendship, but deep down I knew it was wrong. I also realized that part of me, maybe the selfish part, found a perverse satisfaction in the guilt she carried from her past. She didn't know I knew. She smiled, laughed, kissed my cheek goodnight, and I swallowed my growing anger, my confusion, my selfish delight in her remorse. At times, I watched her cry quietly, overwhelmed by the memory of her own mistakes, and I stayed silent, because somehow it made me feel alive, powerful, guilty, and relieved all at once. The weight of secrets, I learned, is a strange burden. You carry the knowledge of someone's past, their regrets, and your own complicity. Every glance, every interaction becomes charged with unspoken truths. You become an actor in your own life, performing a role for someone who doesn't know the full story. Asterisk, and that's when the real struggle began, not with her, not with our relationship, but inside my own head. I loved her. I wanted to spend my life with her, and yet I couldn't ignore the part of myself that thrived in the quiet imbalance of knowledge and secrecy. I began analyzing every smile, every hesitation, every small gesture. Was she truly remorseful, or was she playing a role for me? And what about me? Was my love real, or was it fueled by control, by the comfort of being the one who knew more? I felt trapped in a maze of my own making, unable to tell the truth, unable to turn back, and unable to fully surrender to the life we had planned. In the end, I made a choice, not out of morality, not out of courage, but out of love, twisted, complicated, imperfect love. I would marry her. I would embrace the life we had imagined, all the while carrying these truths silently inside me. That night, I held her in my arms and felt the sharp contrast between warmth and pain, between joy and guilt. I realized that our story would never be simple, never purely romantic, never perfectly moral, but it would be ours, and for better or worse, I was ready to live it. And so, with the ring on my finger, with the memories of betrayal and secret indulgences swirling in my mind, I stepped into the life we had planned together, a life filled with love, yes, but also secrets, shadows, and the quiet ache of what we had both done, both hidden, both survived. Asterisk. The days after discovering her secret were heavy, suffocating. Every morning, I woke up with the same thoughts spinning in my mind. How did this happen? The sunlight streaming through the blinds felt colder than ever. Even the familiar smell of coffee, the chirping of birds outside our window, the soft hum of the city, everything seemed slightly distorted, like reality itself had shifted. I watched her move around the apartment, humming absent-mindedly, unaware that I carried a silent storm inside me. The way she brushed her hair, the small crease of worry between her brows, the nervous way she stirred her coffee suddenly. Every ordinary gesture became loaded with meaning, a secret code I alone could read. At night, I found myself lying awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rhythm of her breathing beside me, feeling the contrast between her peace and my turmoil. I tried to rationalize it, to tell myself that what she had done was in the past, that it didn't define our future. But it wasn't that simple. Every memory of her laughter, every gentle touch I once cherished, now carried a shadow, a reminder that perfection is often an illusion. I also wrestled with my own choices. My connection with my ex wasn't physical, but emotionally it had blurred lines I wasn't proud of. Each late-night message, each lingering conversation, each echo of past intimacy made me question myself. Am I just as guilty as she was? I couldn't deny it, and yet I justified it, telling myself that love could forgive imperfection, that emotional mistakes weren't the same as betrayal in flesh. Every decision, every glance, every word exchanged in the apartment now carried layers of subtext. I became hyper-aware of everything she said and did. Her apologies, her small acts of kindness, the way she sometimes lingered at the doorway as if expecting my praisal of it was magnified in my mind. And beneath it all was the undeniable truth. I had knowledge that she didn't, and that knowledge gave me a sense of control I wasn't sure I deserved. Asterisk, her remorse was palpable. Some nights I would find her in the living room, curled up on the couch, silent tears streaking her cheeks. She would not speak, not explain, just sit there, letting the memory of her past mistakes consume her. And I felt an unsettling mix of emotions. There was sorrow, certainly, sympathy for her pain, regret for the damage that her choices had done to our relationship. But there was also something darker, something I couldn't quite admit even to myself, a perverse satisfaction. Seeing her struggle, seeing her confront the consequences of her actions, made me feel powerful. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because I was the one who knew, the one who held the key to her peace or unrest. I questioned myself constantly. Am I cruel? Am I selfish? Every time she looked at me with eyes full of guilt, I felt a strange rush, a validation of my own worth. It was as if, in her repentance, my own hidden sins were somehow excused, or at least overshadowed. And yet, this power was fragile. I had to maintain appearances, smile when she smiled, laugh when she laughed, and act as if nothing had happened. My life became a careful choreography of deception, a dance of emotions where every step had to be calculated, every word weighed. I couldn't slip, couldn't reveal the smallest hint of my own secrets, because then the balance would collapse. Some nights, I would catch her glancing at me with suspicion, a fleeting moment that would vanish as quickly as it appeared, and those moments terrified me, because they reminded me that the world I had constructed a world where I could observe, manipulate, and protect myself emotionally was precarious. One wrong step, one slip of the tongue, and everything would shatter. Asterisk, even though I had chosen to stay with her, temptation still lingered, like a shadow that refused to leave. My ex had reached out, casually at first, asking how I was, reminiscing about old times. I told myself it was harmless, just conversation, but there was a thrill I couldn't deny. Every laugh we shared, every memory we unearthed, felt electric. It reminded me of a part of myself that had been lost, or perhaps buried, beneath the expectations of love, commitment, and morality. I started to crave her attention in ways I shouldn't. Each text became a small indulgence, a secret pleasure that no one else would know. I was walking a tightrope, balancing my love for my fiancée and the excitement of something forbidden, something familiar, and yet I hated myself for it. I hated the thrill, the quiet excitement of breaking a rule I had sworn to uphold. Every time my fiancée laughed at a joke or leaned on my shoulder, I felt the tension double the warmth of her presence mingled with the guilt of my own disloyalty. I was living two lives simultaneously, one with her, full of care and affection, and one with my memories of the past and my secret indulgences. I kept telling myself, it's harmless. It's just nostalgia. It doesn't cross the line. But deep down, I knew that even without physical betrayal, the emotional intimacy I shared with my ex could wound my relationship. It was a quiet poison, slowly seeping into my heart, mixing with my desire to control, observe, and manipulate the emotional terrain between my wife-to-be and myself. The apartment, once a sanctuary, felt like a cage. The walls seemed to close in every time I read a message or recalled a private joke. I could almost hear her laugh echoing from the past, a reminder of both innocence and temptation. And every night, as she slept peacefully beside me, I wrestled with my own reflection in the dark, confronting the uncomfortable truth. Love, even the strongest love, can coexist with betrayal. Asterisk nights became my therapy sessions. Sitting alone in the dim light of our living room, I stared at the walls lined with pictures of happier times, my eyes tracing every familiar shape. Her face in photographs smiled back at me, radiant and unaware. And I felt like a fraud. I replayed moments again and again. The day we first met, the rainy Thursday where I realized I loved her, our late-night conversations, and the subtle signs I had missed, the small glances, the hesitation in her tone, the way she sometimes seemed absent even when present. I questioned everything, my love for her, my love for myself, the very meaning of love. I began to notice patterns in my behavior that terrified me. I was monitoring her, subtly controlling the emotional environment and secretly relishing her guilt. I had become a silent observer, a puppeteer of emotions, playing with fire. And the fire burned both ways. Sai could not escape the tension, the anxiety, the self-recrimination. And yet, amidst the guilt, there were moments of clarity. I saw our love for what it really was. Flawed, human, complicated. It wasn't perfect, never had been, and never would be. It was raw, real, and terrifying in its imperfection. And perhaps that was the only love worth holding on to, the kind that could survive guilt, secrecy, and betrayal, if only we could navigate it carefully. Asterisk. Every day presented a new moral challenge. Should I respond to my ex's texts immediately or wait? Should I indulge in my curiosity or suppress it? Should I push my fiancée to forgive herself faster, just to soothe my own conscience? Each small decision carried immense weight, like placing a stone on a delicate scale that could tip at any moment. I noticed myself analyzing every interaction with her, the tilt of her head, the pause before answering, the inflection in her voice. Each detail became a clue, a piece of a puzzle I wasn't sure I wanted to solve. I felt trapped in a labyrinth of my own creation, where every choice mattered and every misstep could unravel the fragile equilibrium. And yet, amidst the tension, I felt a perverse satisfaction in the control. I could navigate the storm, manipulate the currents of emotion, and survive the emotional hurricane that threatened to engulf us. But survival came at a cost: an erosion of innocence, an increasing numbness to my own conscience, and a constant questioning of what it meant to truly love someone. The tension slowly seeped into our daily lives. Small things became noticeable: the way I hesitated before answering her texts, the faint distance in my smile, the occasional lapse into quiet reflection when she expected engagement. She noticed my moments of distraction, but never the full truth behind them. I started to catch myself calculating emotions: how she would react if I said certain things, how much guilt I could observe without pushing her to the breaking point, how to maintain the facade of normalcy while navigating my own moral labyrinth. Every touch, every glance, every shared laugh was now measured, analyzed, and manipulated in subtle ways. And yet, underneath it all, the love remained, or at least a version of it, the part intertwined with guilt, secrecy, desire, and control. It was a fragile, complicated love, one that required constant vigilance and emotional dexterity to maintain. And I knew that at any moment, the delicate balance could collapse. By the end of part 2, I felt the storm approaching. The combination of her remorse, my secret temptations, and the weight of knowledge had created a tension that was almost unbearable. I could sense it in the way she sometimes looked at me, eyes searching for answers I couldn't give. I could sense it in the silence of our shared apartment, where even laughter felt tentative, fragile, and laden with unspoken truths. I knew that one day the dam would break. One word, one slip, one revelation could bring everything crashing down: the trust we had rebuilt, the love we still clung to, and the life we were trying to maintain. And yet, I couldn't step back. I couldn't stop the game, the delicate choreography of love and deceit that had become my life. I realized that love, in its purest form, might not be enough. Perhaps what kept us together was the struggle, the moral complexity, the shared history of mistakes and forgiveness. Perhaps, in the end, the only thing we could do was continue, navigating the labyrinth one careful step at a time, knowing that the crisis was inevitable, but hoping, somehow, that we would survive it together. The cracks we had managed to hide for so long finally began to show. It started small: hesitations in conversation, subtle pauses, eyes that lingered too long. She noticed something was off. I could see it in the way she tilted her head, in the tiny frown that appeared when I seemed distant. One evening, as we were cooking dinner, she asked me softly, "Are you upset about something?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying worry. I froze, my hands gripping the knife more tightly than necessary. I wanted to tell her the truth, to confess my own faults, but the words died in my throat. Instead, I smiled faintly and said, "No, I'm fine. Just tired." The lie slipped out effortlessly, but her eyes didn't believe me. She looked away, slicing vegetables in silence, and I could feel the tension building, the storm gathering just beyond the surface. Every small interaction became charged with unsaid truths. Even a simple touch on the arm, meant to comfort or connect, carried weight. I began noticing her reactions to my subtle distance, the way she flinched slightly when I spoke, the way she seemed to brace herself for something unspoken. And in that moment, I realized that the emotional dam was cracking, and we were dangerously close to the flood. It happened one night, unexpectedly. She had been quiet all evening, her eyes shadowed with unspoken thoughts. Finally, she looked at me, her voice barely a whisper, Do you know what it's like to carry guilt every single day? I felt my heart skip a beat. The words cut deeper than any betrayal could. She spoke of her past mistakes, her tears flowing freely now, her body trembling as she admitted the pain she had endured. "I've been trying to make it right," she said. "I've been trying to be good to us," and there it was, my own guilt screaming silently inside me. The emotional betrayal, the secret indulgences with my ex, the manipulation of her emotions, I could no longer ignore them. Yet I stayed silent, watching her unravel before my eyes, my chest tight with a mix of shame and strange satisfaction. Her voice rose slightly, trembling but determined. "You don't understand, do you? You don't know what it feels like to live with a secret that can destroy everything." Her eyes were locked on mine, demanding honesty, demanding confession. And I realized the truth. This was the confrontation we had been avoiding. Not a fight, not an argument, but a reckoning of emotions, of guilt, of love tangled with lies. I could no longer hide behind silence without risking total collapse. The words I had been avoiding for months finally surfaced, raw and unpolished. "I know," I said quietly, my voice shaking. Her head snapped up, eyes wide with shock. "Know what?" she whispered, voice fragile. "I know about everything, about your past, and I've had my own mistakes too," I faltered, the confession catching in my throat. I watched as the realization dawned in her eyes, the mixture of fear, anger, and confusion washing over her face. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "You too." My heart ached at the truth reflected in her expression. "Yes," I admitted. "I've kept secrets as well. Emotional connections with someone from my past. It wasn't physical, but it was. Wrong, I couldn't tell you. I was afraid, ashamed, and I think part of me wanted to see you feel remorse too." The silence that followed was deafening. The apartment seemed to shrink around us, charged with emotion so heavy it pressed on our chests. Neither of us moved, neither of us spoke. All that existed was the weight of honesty, raw and piercing, and the sudden vulnerability between us. What followed was chaos in its most human form. Words that had been simmering for months, unspoken emotions, and hidden fears erupted like fire. She yelled, not angrily at first, but in pain, in frustration, in the release of pent-up guilt and betrayal. "You manipulated me," she shouted, tears flowing freely. "You watched me suffer, and you liked it." Her voice broke, raw and trembling. "How could you do this? How could you stay silent all this time?" I wanted to explain, to defend myself, but the words felt hollow. The truth was there, naked and uncomfortable. I was afraid, I admitted. Afraid of losing you. Afraid of ruining everything. I didn't know how to face my own guilt, or yours. The apartment shook with emotion, our lives laid bare, every secret, every betrayal exposed in the flickering light of the kitchen. It was terrifying, and yet, for the first time, it felt real, raw, human. After the storm, we sat in silence, both trembling from the intensity of the confrontation. Slowly, the screaming subsided, replaced by quiet sobs and the sound of ragged breathing. I reached for her hand, and she let me take it, though her eyes still reflected the pain. "I don't know if I can forgive you," she whispered, "or if I even want to. But I need to understand, and I need to understand myself," I admitted. "I need to know why I let this happen, why I kept my own secrets. I don't want to hurt you, not anymore. We talked for hours, voices shaking, hearts exposed. We revisited every moment, every choice, every failure. And slowly, painfully, we began to understand not just each other, but ourselves. The love we had, flawed as it was, survived because we were finally willing to face the truth. No matter how excruciating it was, the next days were delicate. Every interaction, every word, every glance required care. Trust, once fractured, demanded constant attention. We didn't pretend the past hadn't happened, we acknowledged it, confronted it, and tried to move forward together. There were moments of tenderness, small gestures that rebuilt the fragile bonds. A soft touch on the shoulder, a quiet "I love you," shared laughter that didn't hide pain. It was slow, painstaking work, but each step forward was a victory against the shadows of betrayal. And yet, we both knew that the scars remained. The secrets, the guilt, the emotional manipulation, they would never fully disappear. But for the first time, we were navigating the relationship as equals, both aware of the fragility and beauty of love built on imperfection. In the aftermath, I realized that love isn't simple. It isn't pure or perfect. It's messy, complicated, and often painful. The confrontation had brought us to our knees, but it had also forced honesty and a fragile kind of understanding. We survived, not because the betrayals were erased, but because we confronted them. We survived because love, in its rawest form, can endure guilt, mistakes, and the uncomfortable truth of human imperfection. And so, we continued, perfect, scarred, but aware, choosing each day to love, forgive, and navigate the shadows together. The storm had passed, but the memory of its fury remained, a reminder that love is never easy, but always worth fighting for. The morning after our long, heart-wrenching conversations, I woke to the soft sunlight streaming through the blinds. She was still asleep beside me, her breathing slow and even, the tension of the past nights still lingering in the curve of her shoulders. For the first time in months, the apartment felt like it could breathe again. I watched her quietly, remembering the storm we had endured, the tears, the confessions, the shouting, the moments of raw pain. They had all led to this fragile calm. There was a sense of relief, yes, but also a haunting awareness that trust, once broken, is never fully restored. I reached over, brushing a strand of hair from her face. She stirred, eyes half open, and gave me a small, tentative smile. That simple gesture, so mundane yet so profound, carried with it the weight of forgiveness, understanding, and the shared experience of surviving the emotional tempest together. Life slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy. We shared meals, laughter, and quiet evenings, but there was a new layer to everything we did. Every conversation was deeper, more intentional. Every touch, glance, and word carried a newfound honesty. I learned to speak openly about my feelings, no matter how uncomfortable. She learned to share her vulnerabilities without fear of judgment, and together we navigated the complexities of love and forgiveness. Each day, a delicate balance between past scars and present hope. We created small rituals to rebuild trust, a shared coffee every morning, weekly walks in the park, late-night conversations where nothing was off-limits. Each moment, while ordinary on the surface, was a conscious effort to repair the emotional foundation that had been shaken as the weeks passed. I reflected on what had happened and why. Love is not merely passion or romance, it is also patience, understanding, and resilience. It is the willingness to face the uncomfortable truths about oneself and one's partner. I realized that our love survived not because of perfection, but because of honesty. The confrontation, the confessions, the storms we weathered, they all revealed the fragility and strength of human emotion. Love is never simple, but it is the complexity that makes it real and worth protecting. I also understood my own failings, my emotional betrayals, my secret indulgences, my manipulation of guilt. These were mistakes I could not undo. But acknowledging them, facing them, and committing to change allowed me to grow and to love more authentically. Trust is not something that can be rebuilt overnight. It is a slow, painstaking process, requiring constant effort and attention. We established open communication, transparency, and mutual accountability. No longer were there unspoken fears or hidden truths lurking beneath the surface. We created a system of honesty, where we could share our thoughts and feelings without fear of judgment. Each confession, each apology, each act of understanding became a brick in the new foundation of our relationship, and slowly the tension and shadows of the past began to fade. The apartment, once heavy with secrets, now felt light, warm, and safe. It was not a perfect love, but it was a real one survivor of storms, stronger for having endured them. I learned that acceptance is a key part of love. Accepting her past, accepting my own mistakes, accepting the imperfections in our relationship, these were the steps that allowed us to move forward. She too grew. She no longer carried the crushing weight of guilt alone. She shared it, acknowledged it, and we transformed that burden into understanding. Together, we learned that mistakes do not define us. Our responses to them do. Every challenge, every moment of confrontation, every tear shed in private or in the kitchen had been a lesson. Love was not about flawless. Devotion it was about resilience, empathy, and the courage to face the truth. Months passed, and life took on a new rhythm. We laughed again without hesitation, touched each other without fear, and spoke without pretense. The past was not erased, it remained, a reminder of what we had endured, but it no longer controlled our present. We made plans, dreamed together, and embraced the imperfections in ourselves and in each other. Every day was a conscious choice to love, forgive, and be present. Our relationship was stronger, deeper, and more authentic because it had survived the storms of deception and guilt. For the first time, I felt hope without reservation. Love, real love, could exist even in the aftermath of betrayal, even when shadows lingered. It required honesty, courage, and an unflinching look at the truth, but it was worth it, looking back. I realized that our journey was not defined by mistakes or betrayal, but by the way we confronted them. We faced our demons, our secrets, and our flaws, and emerged not unscathed, but stronger. The story of our love is a story of imperfection. It is messy, complicated, sometimes painful, but ultimately resilient. It is proof that trust can be rebuilt, that forgiveness is possible, and that real love can endure even when it is tested by the heaviest of storms. And so, our story continues, not as a tale of perfection, but as a testament to the human heart, capable of mistakes, capable of pain, but also capable of incredible strength, empathy, and love. Months after our emotional upheaval, life began to settle into a rhythm that felt both new and familiar. The apartment, once heavy with silence and tension, now breathed with laughter, conversation, and quiet intimacy. She would make her morning coffee and hum softly, a melody I'd come to associate with resilience and renewal. I noticed how she smiled without hesitation, how she reached for my hand instinctively, and how the simple act of sharing a glance no longer carried the weight of suspicion or guilt for myself. There was also transformation. I no longer allowed past temptations or secret indulgences to influence my behavior. The awareness of my own flaws and the lessons from confrontation taught me humility, empathy, and the discipline of honesty. We were learning, slowly, that a relationship isn't just surviving, crisis, it's thriving in the aftermath. Every day became a conscious choice to move forward, to leave behind shadows of the past, and to embrace the imperfection and beauty of human connection. One of the most important lessons we learned was the value of boundaries. After months of emotional turbulence, we realized that openness alone wasn't enough. It had to be paired with respect for each other's space, independence, and emotional well-being. We began to discuss our fears, triggers, and weaknesses openly, creating clear agreements about communication and honesty. No more hidden messages, no more silent manipulations. We committed to transparency and accountability in every aspect of our lives, from finances to friendships to moments of doubt or insecurity. The boundaries weren't restrictive, they were protective. They allowed us to explore our emotions without fear of misunderstanding, to trust without hesitancy, and to love without the weight of past mistakes pressing down. It was a new framework for intimacy, built from the lessons of betrayal and confrontation. Slowly, we began to rediscover the simple joys that had first drawn us together. Walks in the park, late-night conversations, shared meals, and spontaneous laughter returned to our lives. These moments, though ordinary, became extraordinary because they were earned. Every laugh, every gentle touch, every whispered "I love you" carried with it the weight of survival, the proof of resilience, and the conscious decision to love despite imperfection. We began to create new memories, small adventures, quiet nights together that weren't tainted by secrets or guilt. Life felt lighter, brighter, and more authentic. We learned to celebrate the ordinary, to cherish it as a testament to what we had endured and overcome. Even as we moved forward, the past remained a teacher. We often reflected on the mistakes we had made, the emotional betrayals, the hidden guilt, and the moments of weakness. Instead of dwelling in shame, we transformed reflection into growth. We discussed how we could act differently, how we could communicate more effectively, and how we could strengthen our bond without hiding from reality. Reflection became a ritual, a tool for self-awareness, empathy, and emotional intelligence. We understood that the past could not be erased, but it could inform a wiser, stronger, and more compassionate present. As trust and understanding deepened, we began planning our future with intention. Shared goals, career ambitions, family plans, traveled dreams became touchstones for our commitment. We celebrated each other's successes without jealousy, supported each other through challenges, and cultivated a partnership rooted in mutual respect and shared vision. Love became not just emotion, but action, a conscious effort to build a life together that honored both individuals and their shared history. The dreams we envisioned weren't idealized fantasies, they were achievable, grounded in reality, and strengthened by our shared journey through pain, forgiveness, and growth. Life inevitably brought challenges beyond our personal drama: stress at work, family obligations, unexpected disappointments, but we approached them differently. We had learned to navigate emotional storms with patience and communication. Arguments were addressed with honesty, not manipulation. Guilt or resentment were shared and processed, not buried. We developed resilience, individually and as a couple. Emotional intelligence became our armor, empathy our compass, and trust our foundation. We knew that while life would continue to test us, the lessons we had learned made us stronger and more capable of facing whatever came next. Looking forward, we embraced life with a renewed sense of hope. We accepted that imperfections, mistakes, and challenges were part of the human experience. Our relationship, once fragile and fraught with secrets, had matured into a partnership built on honesty, empathy, and conscious effort. We didn't pretend to be perfect, but we celebrated our resilience and our ability to grow together in quiet moments. We would reflect on the journey, the betrayals, the guilt, the confrontations, and the reconciliation, and find gratitude for each lesson. We understood that love is not merely about passion or romance, but about courage, honesty, forgiveness, and the ongoing commitment to choose each other every day. The apartment was quiet that evening. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting warm patterns on the floor. She was sitting at the table, sipping tea, eyes distant yet peaceful. I stood in the doorway watching her, feeling a sense of calm I hadn't experienced in months. No arguments, no secrets, no tension, just the quiet presence of someone I had once almost lost and now cherished even more. I realized then that surviving a storm doesn't just mean enduring it. It means finding peace afterward, in the simple moments, in shared silence, and in mutual understanding. I approached her slowly, taking her hand in mine. "I'm grateful," I whispered, "for everything." "For us," she looked up, her eyes reflecting the journey we had endured, and smiled a smile that carried forgiveness, hope, and love. We spent that evening talking, not about the past with bitterness, but about what we had learned. We revisited the pain, the mistakes, the betrayals, and the moments of triumph and understanding. I admitted once more the secrets I had kept, the emotional indulgences, and the ways I had manipulated guilt. She admitted the depth of her remorse and how it had shaped her understanding of love, commitment, and trust. Together, we recognized that the journey had been painful but necessary. It forced honesty, self-awareness, and the courage to confront uncomfortable truths. Love had been tested, stretched, and refined, and in that refinement, we found resilience, intimacy, and a bond that was deeper than before. The weeks that followed were filled with intentional actions. We rebuilt routines, strengthened communication, and re-established trust. Small rituals, morning coffees, nightly walks, and candid conversations became sacred spaces for connection. We celebrated not only love, but also growth. We acknowledged each other's flaws, forgave mistakes, and cultivated patience. Each day was a conscious choice to embrace imperfection and to love deliberately. Fully aware of the lessons from the past, I noticed how our home felt warmer, lighter. The shadows of guilt and secrecy were replaced by transparency, laughter, and authentic intimacy. The foundation was no longer fragile, it was strengthened by shared trials, honesty, and mutual understanding. We learned the power of vulnerability, sharing fears, doubts, and insecurities without fear of judgment became a cornerstone of our relationship. Emotional intimacy grew stronger than ever, rooted in the shared understanding of human imperfection. Trust, once fractured, was rebuilt carefully. Every interaction was intentional, every apology sincere, every act of care deliberate. The love we now shared was not naive. It was mature, resilient, and tested by fire. We also discovered gratitude, not just for the good times, but for the challenges. Each difficulty we had faced became a lesson, shaping how we communicated, loved, and supported one another. Forgiveness became the ultimate lesson. Not forgetting, not excusing, but choosing to release the grip of past mistakes on the present. I forgave her mistakes, her guilt, and even the suffering she had caused me indirectly. She forgave my hidden indulgences, my emotional lapses, and the subtle ways I had manipulated situations. Together, forgiveness became a bridge away to honor the past while embracing the present and looking toward the future. Through forgiveness, we discovered freedom. Freedom from resentment, from fear, from guilt that had once threatened to consume us. Freedom to love without hesitation, to rebuild trust without fear, and to embrace life with open hearts. We set goals, not just practical ones, but emotional and relational ones. We committed to honesty, to patience, to empathy, and to continual growth. Life became a shared project, a journey of conscious choices and deliberate love. We learned that love is not a passive emotion. It is an active effort. It requires courage to face truth, humility to admit mistakes, and compassion to forgive. And it requires commitment to navigate imperfections together. Embracing the human experience fully, we also began helping others, sharing our lessons in subtle ways through empathy, support, and example. Our journey became not just a personal story, but a beacon of what resilience, understanding, and intentional love could achieve. Looking back, I understand now that love is never perfect. It is messy, flawed, and often painful. But it is in the imperfection that its beauty lies. Our story filled with betrayal, guilt, confrontation, and reconciliation teaches that love can survive mistakes, that trust can be rebuilt, and that forgiveness is a choice requiring courage and empathy. The most important lesson is this: love is not about avoiding mistakes, but about facing them with honesty. It is not about perfection, but about resilience. It is not just about passion, but about intentional care, trust, and growth. As we sit together, hand in hand, I realize that our love, tested and refined, is stronger, deeper, and more authentic than it ever could have been without the trials. And that is the message I carry forward. Love endures when we face truth, embrace imperfection, and choose each other every day.